Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Father Talks podcast. I'm here with Dr. Lori Davis. Uh, Dr. Davis, hey, welcome to the show. I am very ecstatic to have you here. A lot of questions, a lot of things to, well, try to understand.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Okay, so I'm a nurse practitioner with a doctorate. So I'm a doctor in nursing profession.
Okay.
And I'm also a certified sex counselor. I'm a relationship coach. So I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is a type of trauma work. So putting all this together in an intentional way to try to bring a really mind body approach to working with people to have better sex lives and better relationships for the long term.
Right. Okay. So, I just recently had an interview where I talked to another guest who was who specializes in somatic work, and we talk primarily how emotions affect men, how, because sometimes we don't talk, and it can have a different effect on your body. So how does what you do, pair with, sex and intimacy?
Yeah. Well, I think unfortunately in our culture, way too many folks have had trauma. So that's one aspect, whether that be sexual trauma or what I would call relational trauma, meaning, difficult early relationships that sort of set patterns of reactivity in us as we become closer to each other.
Gotcha.
And then also just wider kinds of trauma. And, anytime we've had too much, too fast, too soon without support,
Yes.
that can be a form of trauma. On
Okay.
the other hand, it's not all about trauma per se. It's also about just how the body and the nervous system are reacting to certain kinds of situations.
Okay.
So that's the somatic piece. Can we tune in? Can we get curious? Can we be with what's happening in a new way to create greater opportunity for flexibility in the choices we're going to make in the moment with our partner?
Okay. So, I mean, it makes sense. And again, this is a new topic for me. And again, I am, the goal is to make some connections, to get some understanding. So, hey, in the future, well, and also a lot of men, we don't understand this stuff. There are things that we've had issues in our lives that may that may affect us, in our relationships. So this is just one more piece to, try to put out there and say, hey, maybe this will reach somebody who is in this particular situation. So, um, I guess one of my first questions would be, so why do some men, tie their, self-worth to like their partner, like how they, their partner wants sex, you know?
Yeah. I think that we live in a patriarchal culture, and that's going to set up certain expectations for men about where they get their self worth, you know? So there's a classic kind of old school history where men get their self worth from what they do in the world, right? So that can be what they're accomplishing outside of their relationship. The other piece of where men are classically trained to get self worth is from being able to I won't use the word conquer, but be able to get that feedback of longing and desire from a partner. And so sexual expression and being received sexually is a major part of self-esteem, right? As is what you do in the world. So I call that externally based self-esteem. The idea that my worth is when you like me, when I make enough money, when I'm doing this or that in the world or the community where I have a certain amount of stuff, and that's where I buy my self-esteem from. That's where the problem is basically set up. And sexuality and expression with our partner is just another example of that externally based self-esteem. That's okay, right? Because we want to be able to enjoy, right? And that it is a cherry on top to our self-esteem in a way, right? Our sexual connection with our partners. The problem is that sex relationship can't really handle that weight,
Right.
right? If the weight of your self-esteem is coming from this, it's just not going to work out. It's going to put too much pressure on the other person, too much pressure on the experience. And so what I'm advocating for is internally based self-esteem. When we can operate from a place where like I know I'm okay and that I am worth as much as you or anybody else just based on the fact that I inhale oxygen and exhale CO2 or
Right.
whatever the source of that is for you, that's a place where we can actually have sexual relationships and our long-term relationships that are solid and work.
Okay. So let me follow that up with then, like, so for men, what happens to a man when he emotionally gets, when he's getting emotional, when he gets turned down?
Yeah. The feeling of rejection can be so monumental. You know, the idea that this is a painful experience, that this is it's very activating. It creates a lot of urgency to make something different because it feels like a wound to ourself, right? If I'm basing myself on how you're responding to me, if you reject me, that is like a wound straight to my heart, you know? And being rejected sexually has, it's just I think that the thing is about sex is that we are in it, we can, have such a feeling of being accepted, right? So the feeling of being accepted is potentially huge, right? So when we get the opposite, which is rejection, it's just going in, just as significantly into that negative direction. I also think that rejection, um, it tends to pile on top of other rejections. So if I as a person have been rejected or I as a child have like struggled to like connect and feel worthy with other people, it's going to compound the rejection, quote unquote, that I'm feeling in that moment. And I just want to highlight for a second that being told no isn't exactly a rejection, right? So we
Well,
got to back that up. But,
yeah, now and so that's a hard thing to square with men. So you
mhm.
hear no and you instantly think rejection. So, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one of the places where we can be like, slow this train down,
Okay.
right? So when your partner says no, right? We want to know what is this actually about for them, right? I want to maintain curiosity because often a partner is saying no for their own particular reasons, right? And if we can be curious about that, we're going to have a lot more opportunities to get to yes or maybe or how about we try something different.
Yeah.
So it's the no is about your partner. And if your partner's saying no to you about something about the relationship or about something that they're not happy with, you got to hear that too, you know? And so um, I think that the no is a place for curiosity rather than a feeling of rejection. And that is hard work. And that is what we're doing in relationship as we mature through the process of growing up together with our partners, you know?
Well, now I will say that, and I, obviously I talk to a lot of guys, and sometimes, I hear, man, wife always tells me no. It's been this many months. It's been yada yada yada, and oftentimes I hear I hear a lot of things. So some of my guy friends are not the men that they were before, and that is what attracted their significant other. I'll give you an example: the asking or trying to plan. Okay. Now, I have female friends too who say, listen, I'm not trying to plan anything. I don't want something scheduled on the calendar. Okay. So a lot of women are like, that's a major problem. And that's what I hear from a lot of guys is that they're always trying to make a boom boom Friday, if you will. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's not a turn on. So but then there's the overall experience too, where sometimes it is not about us, it's about you. And that becomes a problem, so and I've never heard of never heard a guy say, "Yeah, she's always thinking about her, she always gets hers and I never get mine." It's definitely always the other way around. So, how do we how do men become better listeners and so they can fix these things? Because I can tell you right now, this would be a hard conversation for any man to hear that it's, "Hey, I don't even know how to broach you."
Yeah. Um, well, a few points you made about the idea of scheduling,
Yes.
right? So the idea that no one really wants to schedule, like that just is not hot, basically. That's not exciting. And yet we schedule everything else we do in our lives. If I'm going out for a nice dinner, if I'm going to go see a Broadway show, whatever it is that I'm going to do, we have to schedule it to be able to make time and space for it. And I say, you got to make time and space for this kind of connection, right? So if spontaneous connection becomes difficult or we're not being able to catch each other, setting aside time to be together, I think is really helpful. I know people like tense or kind of ugh, at that idea. I think that we can do it in a way that's yummy. Right? Could it be something that's set aside and I know at 7 o'clock we're gonna be able to spend time together? What I would caution people to do is say, we're not setting aside time to have sex, right? We're
Right.
setting aside time to be together and see what kind of experience we can create in a really open-ended way. I think that's a very different thing in regards to scheduling. Yeah.
I guess, yeah, that makes more sense. I
Yeah.
just, again, it's, it's a tough conversation, and again, I have friends that, I hear both sides from,
Mm.
so yeah, I guess talking to a professional, that so now when people ask me questions, I'll be like, "Well, you know what? Hey, Doctor Davis said this right here, so, hey, maybe you should try it." You know?
No, I think that if we can schedule some time in that kind of way, it doesn't preclude the idea that you could be spontaneous at another time.
Right.
And I think the idea is that we want to see about getting into a rhythm of connection, right? That we do that every few days or whatever it's right for each of us so that we have a rhythm of like being close. And once we have like a rhythm of that, then spontaneity is much more likely to come in around the edges,
Right.
right? So that's on that. And then you were talking about women are feeling like, or the men that are telling you that women feel like this isn't about me, it's about you. So they can feel very one sided. What
Yes.
I find with most of the men that I work with in my practice is that's not true, right? For most of the men I work with, they want their partner to experience pleasure and they also want to really connect with their partners. Often men are socialized, unfortunately, in a way that sort of makes that kind of connection, tenderness, vulnerability, touch not so accessible, right? That's not how men are trained to be. So sex becomes really a powerful and important piece of their life
Right.
around connection and vulnerability and presence and is a thing that really opens them up even more to that. So I think they are wanting to connect with the actual human being in front of them. Unfortunately, I think two things. Number one, they go about it the wrong way. When they're going to initiate, which is really, really critical. Like if you're the one going to initiate an experience, you gotta know how to do it, right? You gotta know how to show up for your partner in a way that is unmistakably clear that not only are you interested in them, who they are right now, an image of them that you wish they were, right? But who they are right now, be curious about that, um, and be willing to be a little open-ended with the ask, you know? It's right, so we wanna do initiation really well. And then on the other side, I would say for women, there's again, I keep talking about culture, but the idea that male desire is, a little bit frightening. It's not safe, right? Not your partner's desire, but in general in society, right? For female-bodied folks, male desire is we've been trained from early ages to be a little hesitant and suspicious of it, you know? And so we bring that knowing into our long-term relationships, and it's subtly kind of like creating this moment when our partner approaches, it's like, "Uh-oh, this is about you, not about me." And so women also have to slow down, right? Notice what's happening, right? See that this is actually your partner, right? Not just the shape of a male figure with desire. That's the way the brain works, right? And be able to work through that. I do think that's a big piece of what we're doing in long-term relationships. One of the things on the female side is learning to be able to let go of some of those automatic responses to men that is putting up a protective mechanism and imagining it's all about them because we really got to tune into our partners uh, who aren't. That's not what this is about. But also, our partners need to tune in to be really present and curious with their female partners so that they feel like it's about them. That's why it doesn't feel like it's about them because we're not present and curious about the person, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So, and this is the thing. So, I've always been taught that, hey, relationships are 50-50. Everything we do is, we're meeting each other in the middle, and I mean, when you really connect with somebody, then you want to be given 100, not, half of everything. And I find that not just, so it took me a long time to find somebody that, what, I could connect with, you know, both physically and emotionally, where it wasn't just sex, and it wasn't just, or I was getting an emotional piece from my relationship, but not the sexual piece, you know. And finally, through trials and, you know, bad relationships, I finally got both. And that I find is, I think in part came from just being able to have an open conversation that, hey, this is what I need, you know, and being heard. Like nobody was offended about it in our conversation. We had an open adult conversation, like two people who had been together, 150 years. You just understood, hey, all right, this is what my partner needs. We're going to make sure that always happens. And I find that a lot of people can't get past the conversation that they need to have because everybody's feelings get hurt before they can hear their partner.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. This is one of the most difficult conversations for us to, like, maintain our, like,
yeah,
"Okay, let me tell you what I feel, and let me tolerate how you react to that. At the same time, I have to hear what you feel and modulate and kind of be a relational human on the other side." So being able to share back and forth around sexuality is just super intense for people. It brings up so much, and people are really, like, fragile, in terms of their, ability to stay down regulated and grounded. It's really
yeah.
fragile kind of spaces.
Now,
Um,
I will
yeah,
that when you and I apologize. Oftentimes I feel like men feel that we can't express how we feel about certain things, right? Because when we express how we feel about certain things, sometimes it is hurtful to our partner, right? So then our partner responds with, well, you know what, that hurt my feelings. And now we never really get into the conversation about what affected me because now I'm apologizing for how you feel about,
yeah,
about what I said.
yeah, yeah,
And the intent's not to be mean, it's we're trying to have a conversation, but now we've already forgotten about the purpose of this conversation because I'm already trying to fix your hurt feelings.
yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, we wanna make sure that the way we're on the one hand, we wanna make sure that the way we're presenting what we're saying is
Yeah.
as kind and loving, but also clear to our partners. And if our partners feels reactive to that, despite that effort, it becomes a problem if your hurt feelings, however that's true or made up, or your story you're making up about something, overtake your capacity to be with the original concern. I do think that's a tricky place for people. I think that's where really working on communication, like, it's a skill, you know? So look, that didn't go that well. Let's back up and go from, like, a meta view. Why don't we practice that again, with another kind of content or something? Having a partner who's willing to be thoughtful, experimental, and curious about the way dynamics are going,
Right.
and not just ending everything with a pointed finger or blaming themselves. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing, right? And that's where we're trying to get to, I think, because otherwise we're just stuck in the dances that we do, and that's it, right? So what I see there is like a dance. You say a concern, your partner says, "What are you trying to say? It's about me." So they get defensive, right? They attack, they withdraw. Then what do you do? Maybe you get defensive, so we're doing like a little dance around certain kinds of topics, and we can get stuck in that, right? So it's like how to see, "Oh, that's a dance we do, not a problem about me and you. We're good people, right? But this dance we do, problematic. Let's see if we can learn some new steps, you
Yeah.
know, together."
Right. And unfortunately, more often than not, and this doesn't have to necessarily even be just about sex, but it's already hard for men to express themselves about most things. We're either happy or we're angry. That's usually how we're seen most of the time. And the goal of this is to try to change that so we can express ourselves about any topic and, be okay with that expression. So For instance, okay, for men, what would you say is the one thing that most men get wrong, that most men get completely wrong when it comes to women and their desires and needs?
Wrong. What I think is the most well, I'll say a painful one, that a
Okay.
lot of women are very distressed
Okay.
about the way that sex is going in their relationship. And what I mean by that is their partner will, let's say you've been in a relationship for a while and you've got mismatched desire. So classically, the male in the relationship has higher desire for sexuality. The female will move into a place of having lower desire for that. Now, I don't think that's like a truism across all things. And I think it's a really complicated thing, but we can set up the structure. As you go through a relationship long term and the higher desire partner has been initiating sex and the lower desire partner has been feeling more stressed or pressured or um, that can set up a lot of really difficult internal sensations for the lower desire partner, for the woman. And they feel they're worried about the next time the partner's going to ask. They're bracing physically for the next time their partner asks. They don't like this. They don't want to feel that way. They are as just as stupefied by the whole thing as their partners are, but they become more and more what I call triggered or kind of traumatized in a certain kind of way just through the way the dance has been going in the relationship. Now I don't really call it trauma, but I'm just calling it like a certain kind of reactivity that's very painful, flinching, pulling away, avoiding. When they actually get to a time when their partner asks for sex more directly, they feel what I call the knot, which is this overwhelming, instantaneous, multiple emotion, multiple physical sensation thing. So, what does this include? Oh no. I wish I was, but I can't find it now. I must be broken. Something's wrong with me. What about him? Why is he always for me? What's his problem? Doesn't he know? So I'm like angry, resentful, shamed, sad, guilty, you know, and then embarrassed, kind of anxious about what's going to happen next. So this all comes in like a whoosh and the body can tighten. And so if you're seeing your partner um, look reactive to the sexual thing that's happening between you, don't take that as a personal affront, like they don't like you. What I want you to slow down and think is, oh my goodness, somehow the way sex has been going in our relationship is really like feeling bad for my partner. And that's not because the sex we actually have is bad. It's not because they don't experience pleasure in the sex you have, but something about the dance around trying to negotiate and actually get to a sexual experience has just created like a really noxious, nasty set of feelings in them. And being able the hardest thing I think for women about having that is that they want to feel hot and turned on when you come to them, but they don't. They feel this really terrible thing. And that's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's just you can slow down and, what I call undo the aloneness. A woman experiencing that is very alone and very ashamed in many ways. And so you being able to tune in as the man to say, "What do we need to do? How can I show up differently?" I
Right.
love like, if I go to touch you and you get a strong sensation there that feels like pull away, let's just slow down, you know? What like, simple touch, a handhold or something might you wanna, like, facilitate them being with that with you lovingly, because ultimately, like, that's what's in the way between you and sex.
Right.
Better lighting or a candle or, better cologne or something. So that's my biggest take home, I think. Two things: to know that the low desire partner, your partner, if they're saying no and looking, um, you can feel some body stuck behind that. Tune in,
Yeah.
you know, tell them you don't want to have sex until you can be with that.
Yeah.
You're not trying to get around it, make an end run. You're not trying to like, uh, surprise them and hopefully they won't feel that way. Or if I took you to dinner, no, be with that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I will tell you that that's a huge ask for men to not not get offended because it's just a it's I know that men connect better through intimacy and women require a little bit more. I mean, sometimes it could be a dinner, it could be a conversation, it could be, you know, you just simply I mean, and it could be something as simple as your wife had a bad day, you know, giving her a back massage and not expecting anything.
Bingo.
you know?
Yeah.
So you're doing it just because she said her back hurts, not because that back massage is tied into you hoping to get lucky. So if you, so I know that those things, and if more men understood that, yeah, you give the massage without expecting anything in return. You know, that's saying, hey, I'm genuinely focused on you. I genuinely care about you. This was a situation that, hey, I just want to do something for you. And again, I've had tons of conversations with, female friends, relatives, everything, and I, I listen intently because I don't want to be that guy, and I mean, I have been in my life several times, I've learned, and I want to see other people learn this, before they get into a situation where, it's been months since you and your spouse have been together. You guys don't do anything. You both just go to work and you come home. You're more like roommates than, these two loving people have made this beautiful family together. And that seems to be where I think our disconnect is, especially as men, is that we don't think, a lot of us don't think about the bigger picture. We're just thinking about, hey, I, I want sex now. And,
Yeah.
and we're not
Yeah.
thinking about the bigger picture.
You know, um, sort of, we want to engage with our partners with letting go of the outcome, you
Right.
know, wanna, like open doors. And if we're not looking for like, well, what's the next thing happening after that? It's much more likely to open up into something that you might be longing for. It's a really tough thing. It's a paradox, right? We both want it, and we have to know that let our partners know that it's okay if we don't get it, right? And yeah, so I think non-erotic touch is super important for women. I think obviously communication and emotional connection is super important for women, but I would also say that it's not a one to one, you know.
Yeah.
Doing one thing doesn't lead to the other, and but I just wanna say to men that I don't expect them to do all the heavy lifting here, that I do think that their partners can be, just as invested in looking at their automatic responses to all this. So that's what I'm trying to get men to do, is look at their automatic responses to all this,
Okay.
and their partner needs to be the same. They need to be doing the same work, right? It's not yeah, so but I do think what's getting generally gets lost is what the men need to do in this conversation, because it often gets painted that the women just need to get it together. And they have a low desire and they need a medication or they need to go to therapy or whatever. What I would say, I just want to like interject this now. I think this is a good spot. Is that I think that what I'm trying to help higher desire men do is to learn how to be relational in their desire,
Okay.
right? They've never really had, if you've not been in a long term relationship with a loving partner trying to create this real kind of thing, you just never had had to develop that skill, right? Right? So you're going to be with your loving one every single day, right? Morning, noon, and night. And your desire is going to get activated. And the way it's going to do, what are you going to do about it? You are being, the challenge is to become relational in your desire. If we can work towards becoming relational in the desire with the actual human in front of us, then we've got something really special. Because I think higher desire partners in relationships have like I mean, I think about it this way, it's like a sacred power, and that sacred power is that the feelings inside your body are always going to remind us about love and connection and slowing down and play and presence with each other. The lower desire partner might not have that bodily signal. They just don't get that kind of heat or urgency or need or whatever you want to call it, the bodily signal of desire and arousal. So to have one person who has that signal to me is essential, right? And you'll never let us forget. You'll never let us get stuck in a place where we're just going through emotions. You'll never let us just become parents and people who check off boxes on a to-do list. The higher desire partner has a sacred like experience, I think, that is about connection
Okay.
and love and presence. It's just that because of the way we use it, just like anything else, if I've got a sword, I can use it in a good way or not, right? If I've got so that's what I'm really trying to encourage higher desire partners to feel like what they have is extraordinarily valuable, an
Okay.
extraordinary resource. Let's use it the right way.
Right. So when we have women, young ladies across the board who have had who have, how do I want to frame this or phrase this? All right, let's just say my significant other has lower desire than I do, but that comes from her being in, at least from what the conversations we've had, it come part in part is because she doesn't know what she wants or what she expects because she's been in relationships where it's been one-sided, or the focus has always been about the partner and never her. So now she's experiencing somebody who deeply cares about her, deeply desires her. It's not all sexual. It's it's all about this person's love for her. But he wants to express it all the time. She doesn't know how to accept it yet, and it's not just sex, it's just about being together. You know, how do how do men learn to understand, or how do women even explain that to a man? And this is actually a personal friend of mine. I know that she's been through, where she was in a long-term relationship where everything sexual was about her significant other. She didn't even know that women could, have multiple orgasms and things like that.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
now, she's dating somebody who she's getting those things, but it's foreign to her.
Yeah.
Now,
Yep. Yep. I think, my heart goes out to this person that you're talking about, and it's such a common story. Whether this kind of experience, which I would call like a relational, trauma or relational negative experiences that
yeah,
set us up in these ways. It can be with partners that we've had in the past. It can also be about the way we understood love and connection in childhood and through childhood that can
right.
make people set up to feel like if you love me, what love means is that you take. If you love me, it's about me doing for you. And you
Okay.
can see how that's like such a setup for women because women are just so classically trained to take care of others and people please and all this kind of stuff. A great skill. Caretaking is a great skill, but it can leave a person they don't know themselves and what they want because everything has always been about what the other person wants.
Yeah,
So
she is a person who takes care of other people.
from early
Yeah,
on, that's what love means. And
yeah,
so to come to me towards love, and I'm like, now I'm mad because I'm older, and I'm like, well, I don't want to do what like
right.
I'm angry, but I don't really have uh autonomous sort of knowing about myself to like bring to match. But I'm just mad because everybody's always wanting something, and now you want something too. So what I would say is, I mean, I know this is all about slowing down. My favorite activity to do here, to kind of get at this is what I call a 3-minute game. So it is, and it's got a couple stages, but I'm just going to share the first stage. The first stage is we set aside like half an hour. And I say to you, my partner, I would say, how would you like me to touch you for the next 3 minutes? What would you like? What kind of touch would you like right now? And then we switch roles. They say, how would you like me to touch you? It's kind of like pretty simple, right? But I think it's like most spiritual, thoughtful things. They all sound simple, but then you get into it and it's like much more complex. It's one of those. So when well, first of all, how is it we've had sex all this time and I never ask you, how would you like me to touch you right now? In a way that I could take in. That's one thing. Um, what we're starting to get at is like we slow it down to like, what do you want right now? Not what do you think you should want or what's cool and sexy, but what do you want right now? How can I tune into myself and like, where does wanting live? How do I feel into what I want? How do I know that's the most important thing that's happening right now? Because it is who I am. Let it come up and out my throat, say it to the other person, and then tolerate what they're going to say to me, and tolerate their reaction. Are they willing? Are they not? And negotiate that. That is a miracle work. I think for people to do that and do it repeatedly. Um, I think it helps us strengthen our capacity to tune in. What do I want? I think a lot of people, you ask them what they want, and it's like a deer in headlights, which is kind of crazy, right? It
Right.
also
Yeah.
tunes you into because when your partner gives you what you want, you just experience that without any need to reciprocate or, perform pleasure or anything like that. Let's do that 100 times in a row, you know, over a short period of time. Then you're getting someone who's like more in tune with wanting and that it's acceptable and they can do that for themselves. It's a flip, I think, for so many people, unfortunately, that their needs, longings, and wants and desires have been, less important than other people's, you know? And that's the work of their relationship. So if you're feeling frustrated as the higher desire partner about that, just know that's your sacred work in this relationship, that I'm going to be here and support and facilitate them having new experiences,
Okay. So,
wanting and pleasure.
so we're talking somatic.
Mhm.
What's actually happening in the body? Okay, like for men or women, and it may be different. Um, but what's happening in the body when like need to we want to feel we want to feel desired. What and when it doesn't happen, we're not feeling desire. What's actually happening in the body?
When you're feeling desire or desired
Desire.
desire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think from like a physiological perspective, there's heart rate, there's blood flow. I mean, there's that kind of stuff. We're feeling warmth, we're feeling, um, you know, I think from a neurotransmitter perspective, I'm just trying to think of which way to land this. So from a somatic experience, I think desire is it's curiosity and longing. So it's a felt sensation of wanting to go forward and go near. I think that desire and arousal are much more like an emotion than some special different category of human experience, which I think we kind of put it into. It's much more like an emotion, right? It's a feeling we feel in our body, right? And it is motivating us in a certain direction. Emotions are also about connection or disconnection, right? And emotions can sometimes make liquid come out of our bodies,
Yes.
right? Right? They're full physiological
Yeah.
responses,
Right
right?
up.
So sadness, I feel tightness in my chest. I feel a lump in my throat. I feel water come to my face and my face crunch up. And what's that about? It's sadness is generally, I think, accepted to be something about connection, right? That it's about help me or you're sad too. Let's be it's about togetherness in some kind of way. I mean, that's one way you could argue it. And I think desire and arousal are the same kind of thing. I feel a sensation in my body. Is that in my groin, my genitals? Is it in my heart? Where do I feel it? Right. And then what's it asking me to do? Right. What's it desire and arousal, I think are, at least in this example, are about connect. I want to connect with my other person. I think desire and arousal can also just be like, I want to rub against something, right? It's not so personal. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's wanting some kind of release. And I think that they're kind of overcoupled a little bit. Like we can pull that apart. That's thematic, where it's like, this is about me wanting to be next to you, and I can feel this urge to like rub, basically, right? That's basically what it's like. And we want to like hold this part of it a little bit apart from the like, I want to be near you, because if it's about this, like, I want to rub feeling, that's going to be, if it's yummy to our partner, it's yummy to our partner. But if our partner is not in the same feeling about rubbing, it's going to feel like too much. You're like mismatched, right? You're here really, elevated, like your system is really, really turned on. And let's say it's a 6 out of 10 in terms of your arousal, and your partner's at a 1 out of 10. We got to modulate.
Yeah.
We got to be able to hold that desire, which is what I'm saying about being relational. Like hold it back, like be with it a little bit differently, because we got to establish connection first.
Okay. So,
You know, yeah,
um, and you mentioned mixed match desires.
yeah,
Explain that to us.
yeah. It's really the core of my work. That's
Okay.
really what I'm all about. I personally suffered in multiple relationships until my current one, and I only figured that out after all this work that I've done on myself and just to learn for other people. Mismatched desire is it's pretty simple. The idea that one person wants it more or wants it differently, right, than the other person. So mismatched desire. Most commonly, that comes around just like frequency. You know, and what I would say to people is mismatched desire is normal. Like, of course, in a long-term relationship, someone's gonna want it now, someone's gonna want it later, someone's gonna want it every day, someone's gonna want it this position, so this mismatched desire is normal in sex. It's normal throughout the relationship, you know? I have more desire for throw pillows on my couch than my partner does, so how are we working that out? So we've differences, and we're trying to learn how to work that out, right? So that's mismatched desire in a nutshell. The question is, why is that so painful for some people? Not everybody with mismatched desire is coming into my office. Some people are able to kind of handle the differences a little bit more easily. I think a ton of things make that hard.
Okay.
I think mismatched desire can be one of the most painful relationship experiences, honestly. So I just want to highlight that when it's gone bad. So I think mismatched desire goes bad because so many reasons, but I think at the beginning of a relationship, we're in a certain phase, right? We're in that newlywed, call it symbiotic, you complete me, it's so easy, you reach, I respond, and vice versa. We're just the same. And then we move into the next phase of relationship. And that phase of a relationship is takes quite a while. And that's the phase where I'm like, wait a minute, you hoodwink me? Like, who are you? Like, what's going on? And who am I? Now I feel
Where the
different,
work done that though.
you know?
That's where the real
That's the
work.
work. Yeah. So that phase usually hits for sexuality about 6 months to 2 years in. It's gonna hit for people about when they're, like, moving in together or, like, we're married and, it's somewhere in that bit. Often people start to have different experiences, and the classic setup for this is a male partner who has the same experience, just as much spontaneous desire as they had before. It's just coming
Right.
out of nowhere, the clouds part, the rays of the Lord shine upon us, and now we're turned on or whatever. And the female partner often starts to feel differently, and they move into a pattern of what we call responsive desire,
Okay.
meaning, I don't just feel turned on out of nowhere anymore, even by you and your butt and that whatever it is, like, it just doesn't do that spontaneously. I'm responsive, meaning, I don't ever think about it, but if I can get willing and get into the experience, and then maybe halfway through it, all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I really like this. I really want this. Give me more. And then after that, we're like, forget about it again. Right. So it's a spontaneous, responsive desire mismatch often. But women don't know that that's coming. Men don't know that that's coming. Nobody talks about how it's going to change in a long term relationship for many, many people. We don't have any skills or tools to know how to, oh, this is normal. I'm not a bad person. I shouldn't, right? All the things. So when we notice these differences and our physiology just starts to show up different, then we start to develop treatment plans for that. Individual treatment. So what's my treatment plan as the high desire partner? Try harder. Talk about initiate more, do the same things over and over again that don't work, but somehow I think if I do it 50 more times, maybe I'll get a different outcome. You're not, you know. So putting more pressure into the system, because the higher desire partner is really the only person thinking about this. And they think, if I don't do something, nobody will, and we'll never have sex again. So it creates this intense urgency and pressure internally to, like, make it happen, right? And that is, it's gonna make arousal seem more intense. It's gonna make desire seem, because now I've been thwarted in my efforts.
Right.
On the low desire partner side, they might start out with, story sex, trying to manage their partner sex. I don't want you to get upset. I don't want you to feel bad. So let me do that. We start closing down the possibilities of the sex we had. It's like sex becomes a quickie, which, by the way, quickies are great, but sex becomes like we do less and less and less. Partners are saying, let's just do you to the higher desire, let's, whatever, let me just give you a whatever. And so we close down what we do sexually. We start to do this thing we call the pursue distance cycle, right? And we run. So let's just imagine we do that for 15, 20 years. And then you show up in my office and you're miserable because what could have been okay, we're two different people, let's try to work that out, is now run through the ringer of us chasing and withdrawing and managing, all in an effort to try to make this work. But all of that effort just makes it worse. That's what I want people to know. There's something about this immediate response without enough knowledge and patience and experimental kind of curious attitude that will just make it worse. It's not your fault. The plan you had to make this better makes perfect sense, and it will just make it worse. So trying to learn about mismatched desire, um, as a normal, common feature of relationships, not a personal failing on either person's fault, is the key, right? It's the key.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess then the people end up in your office, years later, even though, all right, so we're trying to have a conversation about what's going on in our relationship. Both of us want to fix this, but why do some of these conversations still break down? And we
Mhm.
both want the same thing. We both want to fix it, but we're trying to have these conversations, and for some reason, there's still a breakdown in the conversation, and we end up not solving anything. What's causing it?
I think it's like, uh, sometimes we need to define what we're talking about, you
Okay.
know? That's one thing. People are like, "Sex this, sex that." I sometimes tell clients that the word sex is banned from my office. What would you say if you couldn't say sex? Because I think sex for so many people means penis and vagina, and that if we, like, squish it down to just mean that, right? We just minimize it to that, I think we're having, like, different conversations. So we're trying to get on the same page about what it is we're talking about. What do we mean? What are we wanting out of that? So that's one thing. I think that we're, acting from a lot of, pre-existing core beliefs about shoulds. Everyone, we should have sex every day. That's what you're supposed to do. That's how it is. And I know that's because that's how my body feels and that's normal and natural and that's evolutionary or whatever the reason you're going to pull that like your personal thing is the normal thing, right? So we want to like really examine our shoulds and what's normal. We want to examine like what are the implicit contracts here in this relationship. Did you come into this relationship expecting that you would have like sex on tap basically, right? And if so, where'd you come up with that idea? So we want to look at implicit core beliefs because if we're working from language that we don't share and we're working from implicit ideas and beliefs about how desire and sex work in relationships, well, we're going to just be arguing for our own point and not being able to catch our partner's idea. So we call that a losing strategy in the work I do. It's the losing strategy of being right. You can be right or you can be in a relationship, right? So when it comes to sex, we got to get out of the deal that like my sexual whatever is normal and right and yours isn't, right? So that's going to be a lot of rewiring. So I think just some fundamental sexual kind of education and knowledge about how this stuff all works and getting on the same page about what we're working with is key. People just become really reactive in these conversations. This is fundamentally like there's a writer who talks about this as the sexual crucible, a crucible where we put the heat on to grow. Yep. So sexuality is the crucible for growing you as a human being. We put you in as a little embryonic, Michael before he got in this relationship, and we put the heat on. And then the challenge is to grow, right? To grow and to be able to do this thing where I can feel my butt in the chair and I can lean back a second and I can let you talk and I can try to understand. I want to be able to like understand you and help you understand me. I think people get and they take it too fast. They do it once and say, the classic thing, Michael, is that people come into my office and I'll say, "Have you ever talked about this problem that you're having?" And they'll say, "Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. 20 years ago, said one sentence, and my partner, like, raised half an eyebrow, and I knew, that was it, would never gonna happen, or she didn't wanna hear, or he didn't wanna hear, um, and so knowing that this takes patience and persistence and growing up, to tolerate the heat of the crucible of, like, of a sexual mismatch or right, is what we're after. So knowing that you're going into a crucible and you gotta man up, you gotta woman up, you gotta put on your protective barrier, your containing barrier, and work on becoming a mature adult in a long-term relationship. That's the challenge. And oftentimes that takes help from another person because a third party can help us stay grounded and really look at what we're trying to what's the enemy, right? And it's not your partner,
Right.
you know. Mhm.
I can tell you it's taken me a long time just to be wrong about simple things, even, in life. So I can imagine that people going through something as, I don't want to say traumatizing, but as difficult as, talking about your sexuality or talking about your lack of sex or, your need for, you know, all of those things I can imagine are extremely difficult because, again, I've had a hard time, not so much anymore, but, just being able to acknowledge my part in something. being able to sit and say, okay, you know what? Had I not done this, or had I have been, more responsive to what was said to me, maybe we would not be arguing right now. you know, and I've done my share of therapy, for different things, and you learn a lot about yourself, learning to recognize, hey, what, we're arguing about something, but we're not arguing because of this. We're arguing because of something else that upset me, and I turned this I turned this opportunity to argue about that.
Sure did.
You
That's
know,
what we do.
so and
Mhm.
that's so I imagine that this is roughly it's a it's a learned skill,
Sure
you know,
is.
and I can tell anybody listening, all of this, like anything, requires practice, because again, and I've heard a lot of stuff today that, I'm like, man, I don't want to have to do that. you know, and I can tell you, any man listening to, like, there's no way I can sit and just, but taking the time to,
Yeah.
understand each other. I mean, especially is critical if you want to stay in this long-term relationship. If you've been in relationship for 5 years, 10 years, if you've been in a relationship, you've been married, for any extended amount of time, it requires work. And anybody I know who've been in a long-term relationship, especially married couples, you know, one of the main things that I hear is we talk all the time. We have a clear understanding. I listen to what my significant other has to say, because, this is the person I want to be with. And most relationships don't start that way. Yeah. And if they do, kudos to you, because, hey, you're better. You're probably better than most of us. Yeah. Any-
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, the only thing I was gonna say is, for the folks, I mean, very understandably so, who think, "I cannot, are you kidding me? What are you recommending? Lori and Michael are here, what are y'all, and you gotta be kidding me." What I would say is, "Okay, all right, whoa, 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 whoa. You wanna have actual sex with someone. You wanna rub and do and the blah, 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 whatever it is you're interested in doing, but you can't talk to them?" It's really upside down,
Yeah.
right? You can see how we're avoiding, like, how sex is an avoidance or a dissociate, I don't know how to say it, like, we're not showing up as our full selves. If we can have sex with this person over and over again in a
Yeah.
long-term relationship and build a whole life with them, but we can't have a conversation, so you're telling me that the conversation is more intimate than the sex, in a way, and so what I wanna point you to, if you wanna have intimacy, real intimacy, you gotta be able to talk about it and with your eyes open and your heart open and not your genitals aroused, and be able to have a conversation about what's happening, like, that's intimacy. That's what you're looking for. It turns out if you're telling me it's that hard, it means it's much more intimate and vulnerable than the sex you're trying to have, and so, let's get on it.
Yeah. Well,
Let's
I can
let's
tell you right now,
challenge each other.
to me, one of the most attractive things, in a relationship is conversation. And people think that I'm joking when I say that, but listen, looks fade. Okay. And being able to sit down with somebody and have a conversation, to me, is still one of the most attractive things. You can listen, you could be a 7 and be so emotionally attractive just by your conversation. You know, you can be a 10 and not be able to, hold a conversation about jack and or squat, and that
Mhm.
it, and eventually you get, the looks are just not enough. You want to be able to have a conversation with a meaningful conversation with somebody, you know, just being able to sit there and talk, you know, I can't speak for other people, is a huge thing for me, being able to look across the table with somebody. We're having a glass of wine, we're having dinner, but we're having a very intense conversation about whatever, you know,
And that you
or
can do that when you don't agree.
yes,
That's another thing, that doesn't feel good, but we can do that when we don't agree. Practice it somewhere else. If you feel like sex is hard, well, talk about something else you don't agree on
yes,
and work through that as a skill on your own. How do I stay present? How do I stay grounded? How do I keep my ears open, and my heart open while this other person is saying something I don't agree with? You know, challenge, Mhm.
okay. So, Dr. Davis, do you got anything else that you want to leave us with? Especially, listen, and I specifically mean this on the men's side because we're terrible communicators. So I want a piece of advice to help men be better communicators. And I don't mean just sexually. I mean even just being able to talk to their partner about what's going on and their partner's needs.
Yeah. I would say to, look at how you're listening,
Okay.
right? This is about listening. That's one piece of what a conversation is about. How do you listen? You listen to understand, and you listen to help the other person understand how they feel.
Okay.
This is imagine your partner talking, and I always say, like, this is where you're aiming for. You're aiming for, oh, that makes so much sense. If I, believed what you believe and thought what you thought, and that experience went that way, like that makes so much sense. And so you're looking to listen as long as needs be. You're looking to ask open-ended kind of questions for clarification and support of them to get it out the right way. And then we're getting to a place where, like, that makes so much sense. I get it because that's what your partner wants. They want you to get them. They want to be got. They
Right.
want, and that's how they feel seen. And then they know you see them, and they don't feel like the sex you want from them is about you. So seeing if you can help your partners get got, and looking for, like, could I tell her honestly? It makes so much sense. I get it, you know. And can I let her, if I can communicate that in an authentic way to her, okay, well now we're cooking. And then we got to work on your side about what you need to share. But landing the listening and getting them got
Right.
is going to be huge. That makes
Outstanding.
so much sense. That's all you got to remember. That makes so much sense. That's where I'm trying to head.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, hey, this is exactly why Dr. Davis has been featured in the New York Times, on Oprah's Daily, and Women's Health, because apparently she knows what she's talking about. So, hey, let's take this advice and run with it. You know, we can pass it off as our own.
That's great. And if the listeners want more from me, they can go to mismatcheddesire.com.
Okay.
They can get a series of emails, not a spam or anything, but just a series of emails going through mismatched desire that they can read themselves and learn more. And they can use it to start conversations with their partners. Even just asking them to read about it is really helpful. So mismatcheddesire.com. And otherwise, I'd love to come back and talk to you.
Yeah,
This has been great.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Hey, it's been an education. I love it when I actually learn something. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Looking forward to having you back, and have yourself a wonderful rest of your Sunday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.